Okay, so we're going to begin today's lesson. We've been talking about poetry lately, and today I'm going to teach you a new way to break down poems so that you can understand them better. We'll be working on the poem The South by Langston Hughes. But before I pass out copies to you, I need to give you some background information about the author. Langston Hughes was an African-American male born in 1902 in Joplin, Missouri. He was raised by his grandmother until he moved to live with his mother and her husband in Lincoln, Illinois. He was 13 years old when he moved to Illinois, and it was there in Illinois where he began to write poetry. He published his first poem in 1921. He enrolled at Columbia University in New York City, where he studied briefly. During that time, he became a leader of Harlem's growing cultural movement, the Harlem Renaissance. We've talked about the Harlem Renaissance in the past, but I'll just remind you that during this time, Harlem was a cultural center. It drew Black writers, artists, musicians, photographers, and poets, and scholars. Many had come from the South fleeing oppression, and they found a place where they were free to express their talents. So Langston Hughes was a young Black man raised in the South during the early 20th century. He was a leader in a cultural movement which gave artistic voice, really any voice at all, to many African Americans. The Harlem Renaissance influenced future generations of Black writers. Aside from poetry, Hughes also wrote plays and novels, and he is one of the earliest innovators of jazz poetry. So now I'll pass out these copies, and then I'll read the poem out loud to you all. The lazy, laughing South with blood on its mouth. The sunny-faced South, beast-strong, idiot-brained. The child-minded South, scratching in the dead fire's ashes for a Negro's bones. Cotton and the moon, warmth, earth, warmth. The sky, the sun, the stars, the magnolia-scented South. Beautiful like a woman, seductive as a dark-eyed whore, passionate, cruel, honey-lipped, syphilitic. That is the South. And I, who am Black, would love her, but she spits in my face. And I, who am Black, would give her many rare gifts, but she turns her back upon me. So now I seek the North, the cold-faced North, for she, they say, is a kinder mistress. And in her house my children may escape the spell of the South. It's not a very long poem, but I'm sure you all have some opinions about what Hughes is trying to tell us here. The great thing about poems is that they're open for interpretation. The author may have had a specific intended meaning, but it's also okay for you to have your own interpretation of the poem. For today, though, we're going to look closely at the author's words and try to understand what he meant by them. And we're going to use this method. We're going to annotate the text. I'm sure many of you have heard of annotating before as simply underlining or highlighting important parts of the text, but today we're going to look closely at the author's words. We're going to make notes about them as we read it again. We'll do it first together up here as I write on the board, and later I'll give you a new poem to annotate on your own. You'll want to pay attention now, and you'll want to do well later, because using your annotations on this other poem, you'll write a short composition for another assignment. So remembering the author's background, we'll read through the poem again and I'll make some notes up here. The lazy laughing South with blood on its mouth. The first few lines seem to be in contradiction with each other. The lazy laughing South sounds so inviting and warm. And then you have this line with blood on its mouth. We get this graphic image, but we don't know why yet. So we'll put a question mark. The sunny-faced South, beast strong, idiot brained. Again, we have this back and forth of pros and cons about the South. The South is strong, but it's stupid. Sunny-faced and beast strong seem positive. But idiot-brained, we're not sure. Does it mean stupid? Let's move forward and see if we can find out. The child-minded South, scratching in the dead fire's ashes for a Negro's bones. We could imagine an innocent child playing in the dirt with a stick, but maybe we're hearing that the South is ignorant. So we're given the term Negro, which means that we're thinking about African Americans in the South, and combined with this graphic imagery, we understand that Hughes is talking about how poorly African Americans were treated in the South and how violently. So we can group this graphic imagery to this graphic imagery and talk about how poorly African Americans were treated in the South. Cotton and the moon, warmth, earth, warmth. The sky, the sun, the stars, the magnolia-scented South. These words sound like positive memories. And like reminiscing. They make the South appear to be a peaceful place where anybody would want to be. Beautiful like a woman, seductive as a dark-eyed whore, passionate, cruel, honey-lipped, syphilitic. That is the South. The back and forth here is rapid. It's word by word. The South is a beautiful woman, passionate, honey-lipped, and all of these are positive traits that a woman could be. But she's a whore. She's cruel. She's syphilitic. This is a deceptive woman. She shows you one thing at first, and then later shows you her negative side. And I, who am black, would love her, but she spits in my face. And I, who am black, would give her many rare gifts, but she turns her back upon me. And why does she turn her back on him? This is where we get it spelled out for us. Hughes would love the South, but she spits in his face. And I, who am black, would, but she turns her back upon me. The South spits in his face because he is black. It has nothing to do with anything other than he is black. So now, I seek the cold-faced North, the North. For she, they say, is a kinder mistress, and in her house my children may escape the spell of the South. So, he cannot stay in the South because he is black and he must move north. But he tells us how he feels about the North whenever he describes the North as cold-faced. It is literally the opposite of the South. It is not warm, as we saw earlier. It is cold. And it's not really something that he wants to do, but it's something that he has to do. And why does he have to do it? He tells us in the last 2 lines of the poem. And in her house, my children may escape the spell of the south. So here we have why. Why? For the sake of his black children, presumably black children. So he sums up the entire poem in these last 2 lines. He illustrates so concisely why he has this love-hate relationship with the South that we've seen through the entire poem. The back and forth of positives and negatives have all come to conclude here, where we understand that he does love the South, but he also hates the South. And these are all the reasons why. I'm sure there are a lot more notes that we could have made. You probably have written some down on your copies. And now I'm going to hand you another poem also written by Langston Hughes. And what I want you to do, again, is annotate the text. We're going to do it on your own, and then you'll want to do a good job, because after we're all finished, I'm going to have you write a short composition. I'll give you the prompt after we're finished about this next poem. Before we get started on this, though, I want to point out the use of annotating the text. So here we've taken apart this short 28-line poem, and we could write a lot more. We could spend a lot more time on this poem if we had the time. And I want you to take time and take your next poem seriously and write as much as you can. But I also want you to know that this is not only for poetry. This is for any text that you're not understanding. Any small or large group of words that you're having trouble understanding, you can break apart word by word, line by line, sentence by sentence, and annotate, make your notes, so that you can really dig in and try to understand what the author is saying. Another great way to use annotating the text, which is what I'll show you later when you're writing your compositions, is that you can come back to the text, and without rereading it again so thoroughly as you did before, you can look at your notes, and you can understand all of the discoveries that you've made earlier. So now I'll hand out your next poems, and we'll do your writings.